are into the second half of the year, and I'm so glad that I am still reading. I'm still loving reading, and I'm still discovering so many new characters and new books and new authors that are just bringing me joy. And July was a really, really lovely reading month for me because I read some really mind-blowing and life-changing books. And I think it's even affected my reading in August because I haven't started reading. We're in August and I haven't started reading. So I feel like I have to talk about these books first before I move on to my first book of August. Hi, my name is Florence, and if this is your first time watching me here on YouTube or listening to my podcast, the One More Book podcast, hi and welcome. And if you're a returning viewer or listener, thank you so much for coming back and for subscribing. Don't forget to like and share and follow and comment. Let me know what books you read in July, or what books you wanted to read in July but never got to, because that has happened to me. But I'm just so glad that I managed to read a few books. So let me just start. So these are the books that I read in July. I'll also include an audiobook, one audiobook that I read, that I listened to on Audible. So let's just start. A book that really, I'm so happy that I got the opportunity to read it again. This is Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe, who was a Nigerian author. And we read this, or I read this as part of a Patreon book club that I'm in by a bookstagrammer and book talker called Liza. I can now call her a bookish friend. And she has a Patreon book club that is free, so you can join it. She's called Black Law. That's her username on Instagram and on Instagram and on TikTok. So this was the book of the month for July, and I read this book. I've talked about this book already in a series that I'm doing here on my channel. It's called Patriarchy as Portrayed in African Literature. And this is one of the books that I featured in that part one of the series. So I will link the video below so you can watch it. But because I go deeper, a bit deeper into the book. But I think so many people have read this book because it was also part of a lot of literature classes, English literature classes, which I'm so happy about. My older siblings read this in school, so I read it when I was quite young, I think about 25 years ago. And I could remember a few of the characters, but not so much. So reading it together with a book club was even more amazing. And it just follows Okonkwo, the main character, and he's part of the Igbo tribe in Nigeria, and it just follows his life before and during the invasion of Africa, of Nigeria, by the colonialists. So we see his life, how his life changes, how his life is before and also as the colonialists come, and of course life changed for everyone, for Africans. But it was a really good book because it makes you it goes deep. We learn a lot about the Igbo culture, their traditions. We see that in as much as sometimes we say the African culture was amazing and the white men came and with Christianity and colonialism, let's go back to our culture. We realize that there was a lot in the African culture that was not good, and I'm glad that Chinua Achebe also addressed some of these, brought some of these issues up. And of course we see patriarchy already before and even as the colonialists come, and invade Africa and Nigeria, patriarchy still goes on, and we see how it affects women. I really, really enjoyed this book. Totally a 5-star, and everyone should read it. Everyone should read it. It's part of a series, so I have the other 2 books, and I'm looking forward to reading them too. A 5-star, definitely. The second book that I read, which I also read with a book club. That's why I like book clubs, because they make me reach for books that I personally would not have picked up from my TBR or would even have bought. Like, for example, this. I'm in a book club with another bookish friend, Bukola, and it's a Christian-themed book club. So we read Christian books by Christian authors, or books that have, let's just say, Christian literature. So this is Leah, Unnoticed, Unwanted, Unloved, and it's by Amanda Bedzra. So this, the book club is called the Hangout Cafe, and we meet online. And the author of the book was also present for the book discussion, which I really, really enjoyed. It's a fiction story based on a real, not on a Bible story, a book in the Bible, a story in the Bible by Leah. I believe if you're Christian, or if you've read the Bible, you know about Leah. With the sister Rachel, and the story of Jacob, who wanted to marry Rachel, but he was tricked into marrying Leah first. So this the author gives us a story. It's like the book is written from Leah's point of view, which I really, really enjoyed, because it went deeper into, of course, like, I know the Bible, I know the story from the Bible. It's more focused on Jacob, like most of the Bible stories. They are mostly focused on men. There are a few female-led stories, like Esther. But I love that now we got to see, Leah's point of view. It was an interesting read. I listened to it, because I ordered the book, and because my bookseller, it takes time for him to get the books to me. So I had to get the Audible version on Audible, the audiobook, and I listened to it, which was also very interesting. I actually enjoyed the audiobook. So now the physical copy just arrived. And I shared this on my Instagram stories, and another bookish friend based in Canada, she was interested in the book. So I'm shipping this to her tomorrow, because I have to admit, it's not a book that I will reach for again. So I told her, let me just send it to you. So I'm shipping it to her tomorrow. Another book that I read, this book was really, really hyped. Everyone talked about it. I am late to the party. It's 7 Days in June by Tia Williams, and it's a romance. How do you say it? A romance book? Yeah, a love story. Let's just call it a love story, and it follows 2 characters, Eva and Shane. Genevieve or Eva and Shane, and they met as teenagers, and they fell in love, and then things happened in their lives. They were really at difficult points as they met as teenagers, of course, the relationship didn't work, and then they meet much later in life when they are now 2 accomplished writers. So I liked is it called Second Chance Love? That's the Second Chance Love, I think. That's a trope. I liked that they are both writers, and I liked the African American culture talk that was in the book. But other than that, I don't know. it didn't reach, it didn't, how do I put it? It didn't live up to the hype that I had about it. I don't know. I was a bit disappointed. Maybe I should have read it in June and not July. Yeah. Not, it wasn't for me, I have to say. It wasn't for me. But I still enjoyed it because it was a love story, so it was easy to read. And I read it while I was on holiday. I cannot talk. I read it while I was on holiday. So, yeah. Yeah, if you, I don't know, would I recommend it? I don't know. I've read A Love Song for Ricky Wilde, which I enjoyed, by Tia Williams. And people who loved this book didn't love A Song for Ricky Wilde. And I'm the opposite. So I don't know. If you have a chance, maybe get it. But it wasn't for me. Yeah. A book that I absolutely loved, is The Joys of Motherhood by Buchi Emecheta. I am so late to Buchi's fan club, but I'm now a member. I'm now a fully fledged member of Buchi Emecheta's books. Yeah. It is also included in the Patriarchy series that I did. And it's the story of Ego, yeah, who is a woman in the Igbo tribe in Nigeria. First of all, Buchi Emecheta was an amazing writer. She is still an amazing writer, a Nigerian writer who is a feminist, who was a feminist before even the word had a meaning. This book was written in 1979, and it talks about motherhood. And motherhood, as it is hailed to be like the crowning glory of being a woman. But the joys are not really the joys. The title is very ironic. So we just follow Ego and other female characters on their life journeys as mothers. It's everyone should read this. I think every woman should read this. It's such a powerful book. Patriarchy, of course, and we also read about the colonialist and the invasion of Africa and the pressure that they put on women on top of the pressure that patriarchy already put on women. So, yeah, an amazing read. Highly, highly, highly recommended. This 10 star, for me, 10 stars. And then another book that I read is You Exist Too Much. Oh, my battery is flashing. So the second last book that I read, the second last book that I read is You Exist Too Much. It's a book by Zarina Arafat. And this is a queer themed book. And Zarina Arafat is a Palestinian American author. And we follow the main character of the book is a young woman. I can't even remember her name. But her mom calls her Habibiti. And she's a Palestinian American. She's brought up in both cultures. And we see her struggling with love addiction. She suffers from love addiction, which I didn't even know is a condition that actually exists. But we see her, struggling with relationships because love addiction it's an addiction. It's a condition where someone feels the need to constantly be in relationships, and it's like they get a high when they're in a new relationship. So they're always seeking to enter into relationships, which of course damages the existing relationships that they're in. and they put so much pressure on their partners because they're always seeking a high. And some of the factors that contribute to this is trauma, childhood trauma. And that was the case with the main character of this book, because we see the relation, I can't even call it a relationship, because they just didn't have a connection, an emotional connection with the mother. And we see her really trying to please the mother, because in her mother's eyes, she exists too much. Anytime she brings up her feelings, or just what she feelings, or what she is feeling, or her emotions, the mom is just so self-absorbed, and so self-centered that she never really, had this connection to the child, to the daughter, and she just floats around as a child, and it affects her as she grows up. And then we see her then trying to find this connection through her lovers. And even coming out as bisexual to her mother, she never really manages to do that, because her mom just keeps on shutting her down, and it just keeps on affecting her, and she gets into one relationship after another, and she's just seeking something that she doesn't even know. And in the process, of course, she hurts people, she hurts herself, and she seeks treatment in a clinic where she also meets other people fighting different types of addictions. And of course, she gets support, but it's a continuing process. This book really, of course, it opened my eyes to something that I didn't even know existed, because I always call myself a hopeless romantic. I believe in love. I believe in love, loving people around me, and it doesn't even have to be, it can be like brotherly love, familial love, loving my children, loving my partner, loving my family, but just this constant need to always be in love. I don't know, it made me really think about my past, and think about my past relationships, and am I really it just brought up so much. So highly recommend it. Highly recommend this. Of course, we need to support Palestinian authors, and especially female authors. So good job, because this is a debut book. It's her first book, so good job. And the last book that I read or listened to, because it's an audiobook, is, I will put it here. What do you call it? I think I have it on my phone. It's called A Visible Man by Edward Enninful. And if you're not familiar with him, Edward Enninful was the first Black editor of Vogue UK, I think, Vogue UK. And he was one of the most known male models, Black male models, and he's of Nigerian origin. And this is his memoir. So I love fashion, so I just felt like I needed to read more about him, because he's quite inspiring. He rose up, just reading about his rise from, just wanting to be a model, and then working in the fashion business, and all these. Of course, it's a very white-centered profession, breaking into, there's a lot of barriers, especially for people of color. So just listening to him, how he overcame a lot of these barriers, and his relationship with his parents, which was a bit strained because of his choice of career and just his lifestyle. And of course, his love interest and the stress that came with working in such a very creative profession. I found that very, very interesting and very captivating. And of course, he name dropped a lot of famous people in the fashion industry, photographers, models, supermodels. Naomi, he's very close with Naomi Campbell, Rihanna, and just talked about how all these friends that he made supported him. There are times when he was really down because he also experienced some physical disabilities because he had some problem with his eye, and just the emotional and mental overload that comes with working in a creative profession and working with so many creatives, and of course working in an industry that does not want people of color. It was an interesting read, an interesting listen. And I'm just glad that he got to share his story when he's still, because he's the first of many. So it was quite nice to just listening to him and also finding out the pronunciation of a lot of brands that I didn't know. I loved it. I enjoyed it. If you're someone who is interested in the creative world or in fashion, it's a book that I would highly, highly recommend. Yeah, so my battery is flashing, and I know it's going to go off quite soon. So those are the books that I read this month. In July. July was an amazing month. I think my favorite books were, of course, Chinua Achebe, Things Fall Apart, and The Joys of Motherhood. I just want to go deeper into this series, and I'm so happy that I'm rediscovering some of these African literature, and of course also discovering new authors. Thanks to, of course, YouTube and TikTok and Instagram, and just exploring my love for books and my love for reading, which is just opening up a lot. And I'm now rambling, so let me go. Thank you so much again for joining me, and for subscribing, and for listening, and for being here, and for giving me a like, of course. Don't forget to follow me on TikTok and on Instagram, where I post other reviews or my day-to-day current reads or my DNFs. Hope to see you in the next video. Thank you so much, and bye-bye.